Hi everyone, I've given you a lot of book reviews over the last few days, and I'm going to give you another one. 21 Balloons, William Pene du Bois. Here we go. This is another book from my elementary school days. I believe it was advanced reading for 3rd grade. Every time I go to review a book like this, the first thing I look at is what was the purpose in writing the book? Why did the author sit down and say, I want to write this story, I want to write this story in this particular way? What is the author trying to tell us in telling us this story? And usually you can find the message in the protagonist, in the pivotal character of the story. Whatever lesson the pivotal character learns, that's the lesson that we are supposed to learn as well. But 21 Balloons isn't like that. In 21 Balloons, there really is no pivotal character, and it's certainly not the protagonist of the story. The protagonist of the story is Professor William Waterman Sherman. And at the beginning of the story, he has been found floating in the Atlantic Ocean with what looks like a wreckage of a platform attached to 20 deflated balloons. And why this is weird is that scarcely a month ago, Professor Sherman took off in a single balloon from San Francisco, determined to spend an entire year in the air in a balloon. And so the question is, how did Professor Sherman get in the wrong ocean with 19 too many balloons? And the bulk of this book is that story, is his story. Now what does happen is that he ends up on the island of Krakatoa, where he discovers kind of this weird but oddly ideal society made up of these residents of San Francisco. And so as I was rereading this, I realized that this may quite possibly be the first utopian novel that I've read. And it was also easy for me to see why I liked the book in the first place, because there are a lot of fascinating ideas in here. From the way the government and the calendar of Krakatoa are set up to all the little inventions that they've come up with during their stay on this island. Now it is a utopian novel, not a dystopian novel. It doesn't necessarily show the faults and the flaws of the society. It does tell us the history, and there was some grief during that, but ultimately it's the perfection of the society that we see in this story. But that's what this book is. This book is presenting those innovative ideas in this innovative society, but there really is no change in the characters at all. In fact, at the end of the book, Professor Sherman says that the next thing he wants to do is try it again. Try spending a year in a balloon again. He hasn't changed what he wants to do. So it would seem that the purpose of this book is to present us with these ideas, but there is a little bit more to it than that. As I said, the bulk of the story is Professor Sherman's story. So the question is, why don't we just start with Professor Sherman's story? Professor Sherman's story doesn't actually start until the middle of chapter 3. The first 2 chapters spend time telling us about how Professor Sherman was found, how they tried to get the story out of him, but he refused to tell it to anybody except for his Explorers Club in San Francisco, and about how while he was en route to San Francisco, they were preparing a grand hero's welcome and all the little things that were going on. They really have no connection to Professor Sherman's story, but he tells them to us anyway. So why spend time doing that? Well, I think that Mr. Du Bois was trying to draw comparisons between the 2 different lifestyles. The lifestyle of the San Francisco residents, in other words, everyday life, and the lifestyle of the Krakatonians, which is decidedly not everyday life, at least not as we know it. Showing the comparison between the sometimes foolish ways of life of ordinary people living ordinary lives, and then the very innovative way of life that these Krakatonians have made for themselves. Like I said, it shows the perfect society. It doesn't show the faults that you would see in a novel like 1984 or Fahrenheit 451 or anything like that. The fault of the Krakatonian society is its geography. It is located on a volcanic island. And the volcano is active enough that the land rumbles beneath them, and it's active enough that people are frightened to go there. In fact, that's the only way that their society can work. Their society is secret because the island of Krakatoa sits on diamond mines. Essentially, enough diamonds are located there to make the value of the diamond completely worthless. And so they are very, very careful to make sure that nobody discovers their society. In fact, when Professor Sherman lands on the island, they say that he can't really leave again, he has to stay. But the fact of the matter is that nobody really comes near this island anyway because it is so unstable and this volcano could erupt at any moment. And so they're basically putting their lives in constant danger so that they can live in this perfect society, and it's the only way that it can work. And so he is, in a way, giving us a fundamental flaw of this society. He's basically saying this way of life is impossible unless you put your lives in constant danger like these guys did. And by the end of the novel, it's clear that Du Bois favors neither one of these, neither the San Francisco way of life or the Krakatonian way of life, but a way of life apart from mankind, apart from the foolishness and the foibles of mankind, living up in a balloon and letting the wind take you where it will. And so I still think that this is a good book. It was written back in the late 40s, and for the late 40s it's basically a science fiction utopian novel, but I think it's very, very well written and extremely well thought out. A lot of the ideas in here are very, very good. And I'm still fascinated by them. But I personally tend to like novels where they present these ideas alongside pivotal character changes. And the lack of those in this book, and plus the fact that I don't always quite agree with the ideas that are being presented, is knocking the 21 Balloons off of my favorites list. But it is still a very good book, and I would recommend, if you have not read it, that you find it and read it. I think you will enjoy it. And the next book in the favorites list is going to be There's a Boy in the Girl's Bathroom by Louis Sachar. See you then.